The Prime Minister fights for survival as more Conservative MPs openly call for her to go. In the last hour, the most senior Conservative backbencher, Sir Graham Brady, has been seen walking into Downing Street to meet the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister invited Sir Graham in to judge the mood in her party. This afternoon it's bleak and there are an increasing number of MPs saying Liz Truss has to go.
One Tory MP has said Liz Truss only has hours left to stabilise her government, and even a cabinet minister could not say categorically that she will lead her party into the next election.
That's what we will be working towards, and we hope that we will be able to do that whilst delivering, so that the British people understand exactly why it's important to support the Conservative agenda.
You hope, but you don't believe.
I'm a politician. I'm all about delivery.
Oh, the noes have it! The noes have it!
Last night, the Prime Minister faced an open revolt by some of her own MPs in the Commons, and there were claims that several were bullied and manhandled in the lobbies by ministers.
This cannot continue. Britain deserves better. Britain cannot afford the chaos of the Conservatives anymore. We need a general election now.
Well, at the last count, 13 Conservative MPs have now openly called for Liz Truss to stand down. One says that her position is now untenable. Also this lunchtime, the long-awaited inquiry into child sex abuse says failing to report it should be against the law.
It's not perfect, but it is better if government has the guts to make it law. If it had been in place when I was a schoolchild, then the abuse that we suffered might not have happened.
A warning today that the decline in the traditional relationship between family doctors and their patients in England could put people's safety at risk. And an early painting of the Beatles that may have inspired the Sgt. Pepper album cover is going up for auction.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, Manchester United's Ronaldo will be spoken to today by manager Erik ten Hag after the striker left Old Trafford before full-time last night.
Hello, good afternoon. The Prime Minister is fighting for her political survival after a chaotic 24 hours which saw her Home Secretary resign and an open revolt in the House of Commons. One Tory MP says Liz Truss now has only a matter of hours to stabilise her government. Last night, ministers were accused of manhandling and bullying colleagues to make them support the government in a key vote on fracking. Well, let's just show you the scene live now in Downing Street right now, where in the last hour, the Prime Minister has been meeting the most senior Conservative backbencher, Sir Graham Brady, the influential chairman of the 1922 committee. Now, the BBC understands it is a meeting that Liz Truss has requested. Let's get the latest from our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake at Westminster.
Calm on the outside, at least.
Is there any chance of Liz Truss getting back her credibility, her authority and her ability to lead her party? My sense, speaking to MPs this morning, is the answer to those things is probably not. It would be almost impossible to try and lead the party into another general election. So the question that Liz Truss has been weighing up is there any point continuing if that's the case? Is there any chance of her trying to get back some of that stability? The door is open. The Prime Minister's here with her husband to tell us all.
I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent. And our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
Well, extraordinary moment in British political history, a moment of huge drama. Liz Truss resigning, as she just told us, as leader of the Conservative Party and therefore as Prime Minister. There will be another Conservative Party leadership election within the next week. Our chief political correspondent, Nick Eardley, is still in Downing Street. Her premiership, Nick, has lasted less time than the leadership campaign that she won.
Wow, Ben, what else can you say? What an extraordinary moment in British political history. Liz Truss has been Prime Minister for a month and a half. This has been one of the shortest lived premierships ever in British history. And we've just heard the Prime Minister come out and say she accepts she cannot deliver the vision that she sold to her party and to the country a few weeks ago. This is a really remarkable moment. The resignation of Prime Ministers is always a big deal, but I've never seen anything like this. And let's be clear what's happened. Yesterday, Liz Truss told us all she was a fighter, that she was going to try and go on. What's happened over the past 24 hours is the level of chaos in government, the level of chaos in Parliament and the Conservative Party has led to a point where Liz Truss knows that she can't continue. And what will happen now is the quickest turnover of power that we've seen in quite some time. The Prime Minister has resigned as Tory leader. That's done. Over the next week, there will be a leadership election among Conservative MPs. This is a lightning speed change. The question now is whether the Conservative Party can coalesce around another leader, whether there's anybody that can unite the party. The answer at the moment is no. And whether the party can avoid a general election, because in a week's time, by the end of October, we are going to have our third Prime Minister of the year. Remember, 11 days today, the Chancellor is supposed to set out his plan to fill the fiscal black hole. By that time, Ben, there will be a new Prime Minister. This is an unprecedented situation, an unprecedentedly short tenure for a Prime Minister and an unprecedented crisis in British politics.
And just to be clear, Nick, this leadership election will only be Tory MPs because, of course, the summer election that Liz Truss won was partly MPs, but then it was for Conservative Party members around the country who ultimately elected her as leader. This will be short and sharp and MPs only. So who do you see as the key candidates? Obviously, Rishi Sunak, one assumes, would be throwing his hat back into the ring.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a big question about who is going to take over. I mean, some early names in the frame, I can tell you, Ben. Rishi Sunak, who lost the last leadership election. I think it'll be tough for him. He's quite a divisive figure in the party. There is Penny Mordaunt, who also stood for the leadership, seen by some as too inexperienced to take on the job at a time of such crisis. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, he's somebody who has suggested he doesn't want the job. I wonder if that might change now, given the level of crisis. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, somebody who's managed to steady the ship when it comes to the economy, a bit anyway. Maybe he's in the frame, although speaking to Tory MPs this morning, some fear that removing the Chancellor as well as the Prime Minister, even if it was to swap to put the Chancellor into number 10, would cause even more crisis. I mean, the truth is, Ben, when I came into work this morning, we knew how bad the situation was for Liz Truss. we weren't sure we were going to end up here. There were some Conservative MPs saying she probably has a few days, she maybe has until the end of the month. Well, the level of crisis is such, the level of opposition to the Prime Minister within her own party is such, she's been delivered that message by the 1922 committee of backbenchers that it was game over.